The Indian T20I team put on a show at Kingsmead. They put the South African side to the sword at Durban on Friday after defeating them by 61 runs in the first T20I. The star of the show for India was Sanju Samson, who blasted a 50-ball 107 at Kingsmead. Now, for Sanju, this is a second coming of sorts because he's usually somebody who is a middle order batsman but is now suddenly finding a new wind to his career, at least for India, as an opener. To talk about that, we have our regular co-host Vinayakk Mohanarangan joining us from Noida, and we have Lalith Kalidas, who's I think he's making his debut on the Game Time podcast. Welcome Vinayakk, welcome Lalith. I think because it is Lalith's debut, I think we should allow Lalith to go first. Lalith, just wanted to ask you, yaar, ye Sanju ka locha kya hai? I mean, I know this is a question that Indian cricket fans have been, and specifically Sanju Samson fans have been asking for a while now, but he's a guy who's made his debut for India in 2015, doesn't play again in the format in T20Is for I think 4.5 years. Makes his ODI debut for India in 2021, does not get to play for one whole year after that. Very enigmatic when it comes to the Indian team and Sanju, and it's completely contrasting to his stint with the Rajasthan Royals, where he seems to be something, he's become like a talismanic figure, the captain of the team, obviously very undroppable for the Royals. So just your views, Lalith, as somebody who's seen much more cricket than me and Vinayakk put together, on Sanju Samson.
Well, I mean, the question that you asked, that's probably something that even Sanju would have asked to himself at some point over the last 10 years. I think he did mention something like that last night after the game as well. So it's quite an enigmatic journey for him. And like you said, at Rajasthan Royals particularly, he found a role for himself. And moreover, the team, had a sort of a specific role for him, and, they backed him. And even, sort of thrusted upon him the leadership role as well, particularly even when, they had a player like Joss Butler with them over the last few years. I mean, international already established a player who's also won the World Cup. So I think that's something that, he missed out while, trying to make a case for himself in the Indian team over the last 10 years. Obviously, I mean, a lot of inconsistencies have also hampered his journey throughout that period. But if you see, I don't think there's been a specific role for him at any point. I mean, until the last few months, in an Indian setup. So, he did make his debut in 2015 in Zimbabwe. And I do remember, there was this series where India actually picked him for a tour to England as well under MS Dhoni. And at that point, they did mention that he was too young to make his international debut in an ODI. So that's something that has happened throughout the course of the last 10 years, where there was never a particular role given to Samson. Or even if you take the limited overs, there was tried Rishabh Pant over the last, since he came into the scene in 2016. And I think that's one phase where Samson would really regret in not putting up more consistent performances between 2016 and 2020. I'm saying this because that's a phase where, I don't think the Indian team actually had a specific plan for the T20I setup, particularly because there were no T20 World Cups between those 4 years. And that's where Samson, probably should have done better at the IPL level, where he could have gotten a bit more consistent. But since then, if you look at what he's done over the last 4 years, I think his numbers, it just gets unnoticed maybe in what he's done in the IPL. He's been one of the most consistent players actually at whatever spot he's been playing at number 3 in that role for Rajasthan Royals. Obviously, even then you had a Virat Kohli holding on to that position in the T20I team. So obviously it was difficult for Samson to, come into that spot. And it's actually interesting that he's found his second wind as an opener. I don't think most of us would have thought that he would, that is the spot that he'd come into in his second wind and take over from a player like Rohit Sharma. But it's quite an enigmatic journey.
Right. Vinayakk, just to bring you in also, right now we have this situation where most of the Indian players are either, focusing their attention towards the Border Gavaskar Trophy or are playing, with India A team and things like that, which is why we don't maybe have all of our best players in South Africa. So when we do have somebody like, let's say, a Yashasvi Jaiswal coming in or a Shubman Gill coming in, they probably will stake their claim to being openers for the Indian team. And that's when Sanju will face his toughest challenge. But that being said, he's already now scored 2 consecutive back-to-back centuries for India.
There is a case to be made for the fact that India probably have their best T20 side in South Africa, apart from a couple of changes. That's probably a whole topic. I mean, Lalit might have more to say on that as well, given that, how this approach to having proper T20 specialists in a T20 squad, I think it's taken a while for India to get here. Maybe even their hands have been forced in some sense, in terms of having to separate squads for different series. And now, by some design, we've arrived at a point where we have proper T20 specialists. I would say maybe, Bumrah and Jaiswal, probably maybe Nitish also in there, are the three people who could be added to this. But anyway, yeah, so speaking of that, I think Samson, what he's done, and like Lalit had briefly mentioned there, I think he's gotten this backing for the first time in his career and he's making the most of it. And if a Gill or a Jaiswal do come back into the selection fray, I think he's done well. I mean, okay, we have 4 more T20Is for now, and we'll probably see more of Sanju's fireworks, and I think he would have done well to keep his spot. Abhishek hasn't really made the chances count. He's also been backed like Sanju. I mean, so it's one thing to have the backing, it's another thing to deliver. So Abhishek has been backed as well over Zimbabwe and this period here, Bangladesh and South Africa. So he has 3 more chances. Let's see what he does. But I think Sanju at the moment has to be a front runner to keep the spot, even if India do pick a full strength squad. And the thing about Sanju is, if India do decide to go with Jaiswal and Gill as the openers, Sanju can easily slot in at 3. He's versatile. He can play spin and pace equally well. That's always been I guess in some ways, that's always been a downfall also for Sanju, because, a versatile batter and he could be moved around the batting order, and maybe that's why he couldn't nail down a proper spot. He plays number 3 for RR as well. Maybe not from next season, who knows. But top 3 is a good place for Sanju, and I think even if India do opt for a different opening pairing, Sanju has done enough to nail down a place in top 3, and Surya can easily slot in at 4, I think.
And Vinayk, just to add to that, I think it's fascinating about Sanju is that he's only played, 34 T20Is since he made his debut in 2015. So 9 years, he's played 34 T20Is for India. And in those 34 T20Is, he's basically played in every single position across the top 7 for the Indian cricket team. That is one of the things that maybe also kind of plays on your mind sometimes, where you don't know where you're going to play. You have a chance to play for India, but then suddenly one day you are told ki aap number 5 khelo, or someday you are told acha go play 3. So that also kind of plays a role. But Lalit, just to come to you, you spoke about the reassurance that he has been given by the team. That matters a whole lot. A player like Sanju, where, as I said, he doesn't know what role he's playing, but then suddenly you have a new setup, a new coach, maybe a new captain, who have a different style of communication, have a different equation with the player in particular. And that also kind of helps you revive your own career.
Definitely. Credit must go to whoever was part of that discussion with Samson, Gautam Gambhir and Suryakumar. Particularly, he did fail in the Sri Lanka series in August, like back-to-back ducks. And still, they actually found a role. I mean, they backed him to, come good in the next series. They had that discussion with him that you need to go back and work on a few things. Samson did mention that as well yesterday. Like, that is the first time that he's had such a backing, like where the captain tells you that you'll be played in the same spot for 7 games. And we did see that in the Bangladesh series, where he get a couple of starts, but had another opportunity to play in the same spot. And if I'm not wrong, that was just the second time in his nearly 10-year career where he's playing a series throughout at the same spot. So yeah, obviously that helps in that clarity. You get it's not like you go at 5 at one day and opening the next day. So I think that has helped a player of Samson's caliber a lot. And yeah, we've seen the results in the last 2 games, like back-to-back hundreds, the first Indian to do it. And one thing that is also what has impressed the leadership group is his thought process in the T20 game. Like Samson did mention it yesterday as well, like after the game, consistency is not something that he looks at in T20s. And it's just about going and hitting the balls that are in your arc. That's a philosophy that this team is trying to carry now. But that's something that he's always believed in throughout his journey. We've all seen how he goes about his innings. So that philosophy of T20 that he carries, this leadership group values that a lot. And that has also played a part in, giving him that backing for these last 2 series. And yeah, we've seen the results in this last few games.
Lalit, so just what Amit had mentioned before, given like a full set of players to choose from, who do you think are India's two best openers going forward in the T20Is now that Rohit and Virat, as Sanju made his case as one of the two?
I think that's very interesting at this point, particularly because he succeeded in the spot as a wicketkeeper. It actually helps India. I think India have a lot more of attacking, firepower that they can use in the middle order. Like they have a lot more guys coming up there. You got a Nitish who's not playing in the series, Rinku, Hardik. There's a Ramandeep who's a very exciting talent in the squad as well. He'll probably make his debut in this series. So I think with Samson being the wicketkeeper and opening, it also helps India to use a lot more of their depth in batting. They can add more people in the middle order, and you don't need to waste look at a spot for a wicketkeeper somewhere in the middle order. And like we've seen, like he has this aggressive intent, which might not be there with a few other openers who are in the mix, probably a Shubman Gill or a Ruturaj Gaikwad, who tends to, play that anchor kind of an innings. So in that sense, I think with him being the keeper as well, I think Samson has definitely made his case to, become one of the front runners in a full strength T20I squad. And yeah, other opener definitely should be Jaiswal when he returns at whichever point he comes back. Obviously, Abhishek Sharma is also there. But yeah, going forward, the full strength T20I side would have Jaiswal and Samson as the leading openers.
That is actually my concern looking ahead. The clarity and what they have said about these ODIs in South Africa is great. But India's problem is also that it's a very top-heavy batting pool, I think we have. You throw Ruturaj Gaikwad into the mix. There are just like openers all around. So when that happens, my worry is because none of the others can bat in the middle order, they'll now again think of Sanju Samson in the middle order is a worry that I have, which I hope they don't do that and keep him in the top three at least, if not opening. Like what I said earlier, the versatility shouldn't actually come back to haunt Sanju in a way that he can bat anywhere. Doesn't mean that he has to be pushed around. So let's hope that, when the full pool is available, they kind of look at what he's done in the chances that he's gotten, and maybe because Surya is also good at 3 and you don't want to push Surya too far below. So like when I think about a full strength squad, I think Amit, that's one of my concerns that, they shouldn't revert to the norm with Sanju.
Lalith, from whatever you saw yesterday, what were the things about Sanju's batting that stood out for you? Especially as a
looking at the conditions, his last match in South Africa was last year in an ODI, and there too he that were pretty tough conditions, and he managed to score his first ODI 100. But here the South Africa bowling was that attacking at the start, and they actually gave him a good chance to get into his innings by operating with spin in the power play. And I think that's where Samson actually stands a notch above a few of the other players in the squad and the T20I setup as well in general. Like his ability to dominate spin. Even in this innings, he hit quite a few sixes once he's set against spin. So that's where he stands apart from the rest. And also the kind of shots, if one's against space as well. There are no flashy, unorthodox stuff. He doesn't need to do that. He's got a lot of ability to, just score in the V. And I think you can actually compare him to, in style to a Rohit Sharma. It's quite ironic. Like you've got a player of that same mold right after Rohit has retired. Like he's got similar strokes. Range of shots against pace, and even the pull shot and hook shot as well. So I think those are some of the things that stands out in his game. Like once he's set, he's able to just up the scoring rate pretty well without, doing much of those flashy stuff that some of the other batters need to do.
Lalith, it's fascinating that you brought Rohit Sharma into the mix, because I remember, I think, 2013 or something? Like until then, Rohit Sharma also was a middle order batsman. Goes into the Champions Trophy 2013, is asked to open the innings, and that kind of starts his resurgence, if you will. And we are seeing a completely different Rohit Sharma since then. Obviously, that was in ODIs, and we are talking about Sanju in T20Is. And just to add to what you were saying, the way he played the innings yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, because you are much more adept at stats, but I think some 90 odd runs or 88 odd runs of his 107 yesterday came just from boundaries. And the way he structured his innings was also very instructive. Like he took some 27 balls to get to his first 50 and then smashed around and got the next 50 in just 20 odd balls. And just 43 of his runs, I believe, came from the deep mid-wicket region. So he's clearly somebody who's understanding the template in a sense. I think you mentioned the template that the Indian team are going to take into T20Is going forward. Lalit, just wanted to ask any parting thoughts before we end this podcast today?
No, I mean, like you've spoken about Rohit. I mean, these are two batters like I've personally enjoyed watching, over the last 15 years. Those are two journeys that puts whoever watches them through a range of emotions. So it's good in a way, I mean, I don't think anyone, like whoever's following the game, everybody enjoyed what Samson does. You can't say something wrong about him when you see him in full flow. And I think a lot of people have enjoyed that. Like even we did see Ravi Shastri and a lot of former cricketers reacting to the way that he played yesterday. So I hope that he can keep it going. And we've seen what's happened with our test team over the last month. But this is something, at least there's some positives from this T20I side looking forward as well. Despite losing a couple of stalwarts at the end of the last World Cup, there's a lot more to look forward to from this T20I setup in particular, looking ahead to the next World Cup. So hope we can see more of it in the coming weeks. And yeah, that might reduce a bit of pain from what might happen in the Border Gavaskar Trophy for India when they go there.
Well, Lalit is already dropping predictions for the Border Gavaskar Trophy as well. Wonderful. Vinayakk, any parting thoughts? Maybe not as grim as the predictions that Lalit just made for BGT?
I think we are done with our share of grim predictions for BGT from the last episode that we recorded. No, yeah. So I think one of the things that Sanju said in the press conference was, I found it interesting. We are the world champions. We need to play like world champions. And key word that he used was all in, right? It doesn't matter if we lose the toss and bat first. Our approach has to be all in. And that's something that Lalit wrote about in his the template piece that he wrote just before the series as well. So it's interesting if they continue to stick with that. There is also a thought that, out of 16 years of IPL, T20 might actually be India's best format at the moment. It's taken a while to get here. I think we've all been waiting. Okay, so IPL. It's never really transferred into India dominating this format consistently. They've been winning bilaterals and stuff, but playing T20 the way it's supposed to be, I think it's taken a while for us to get here. So maybe that's here to stay as well. The World Cup win and the kind of template and the attitude that this current bunch has. And Sanju might just benefit from that. He just turned 30 last week, I think, or very recently. And for him to find the second wind, it's really nice, and hope he can kick on from here like the other middle order to opener promotion happened 11 years back, like you mentioned.
Right. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's conversation. We will be back with another episode next week. For now, this is me, Amit Kamath, on behalf of myself, my co-host Vinayakk, and our special guest today, Lalit, and our producer, Shashank Bhargava, who's been listening but does not want to talk at all about cricket, understandably. But on behalf of all three of them and myself, I say goodbye. See you next week.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.